The video wasn't meant for me. I was halfway through reheating leftovers when my phone buzzed. A notification, one new message from Aunt Linda. I smiled. She rarely texted, usually just holiday cards with glitter that stuck to everything. But when I opened it, my chest tightened. It wasn't a greeting. It was a video. My family sat around the dining room table, wine glasses, candlelight, laughter. I wasn't there. I hadn't even been invited. Then I heard it. My brother's voice, mocking. Why bother inviting them? They're just our walking ATM. Laughter exploded. My mother raised her glass, eyes gleaming. Exactly. Let them keep paying. That's their role. Even my father chuckled, nodding like it was the most natural thing in the world. The phone slipped in my hand, the video replaying their voices over and over. My stomach twisted, heat flooding my face. They weren't ashamed. They were proud. Narrator, V.O. They thought this would break me. That I'd keep funding their lives in silence. But they had no idea what was coming fade to black. I wasn't born into wealth. Far from it. Everything I had, I earned one scraped knuckle, one overtime shift at a time. While my friends spent weekends on trips or parties, I was stocking shelves, tutoring kids, doing whatever job I could to cover tuition and rent. Slowly, it paid off. A steady job, a reliable car, a small apartment I could call my own. I wasn't rich, but I was stable, and in my family, that made me their safety net. It started small. My brother forgot to pay his phone bill, and I covered it to keep the line from being cut. Then my parents fell behind on utilities, so I wrote the check. At first, they were grateful. Just this once, they said. But once turned into every month, every crisis, every holiday, where the emergencies magically lined up with my paycheck. I told myself it was family duty. Isn't that what good children do? Support, sacrifice, step in where needed? But the pattern was clear. I gave. They took. My brother bought new sneakers while I paid his overdue rent. My parents upgraded their kitchen while I scrambled to stretch groceries. Yet at family gatherings, I was the one teased. Still single? My mom would say, smirking. Always working, my dad would sigh. My brother would clap me on the back, grinning. Hey, at least you're useful. Our little ATM. Everyone laughed. I laughed too, swallowing the sting like bitter medicine. The worst was last year's Thanksgiving. I showed up with pies I'd baked myself, only to hear my brother mutter to his girlfriend at the door, "Don't worry, they won't stay long. They've got work in the morning. Besides, they're not here for fun. They're just the funding." The words lodged in me like a splinter. Still, I told myself it wasn't malice. They didn't mean it. They were stressed, tired, careless with words. I clung to that belief because the alternative, that my family saw me not as a person but as a bank account, was too painful to face. Then came the video. That was the first time I couldn't explain it away. Their laughter wasn't tired or careless. It was cruel, and it wasn't in private whispers. It was in a toast, raised high, as if mocking me was a family tradition. I stared at the screen until the image blurred, the words echoing, "Walking ATM." And for the first time, I wondered if being their safety net was killing me quietly. Narrator, V.O. I had spent years giving everything. But that night, I realized they had already taken too much. And I wasn't sure how much more I could lose before I disappeared completely. Fade. Foreshadowing of what's to come. After the video, everything felt different. I couldn't unhear their laughter, couldn't unsee the way my mother lifted her glass like a queen toasting a court jester. But instead of confronting them immediately, I did what I always did. I stayed silent, and they took advantage of it. The calls started piling in. My brother needed money for car repairs. My parents' mortgage was a few days late. My cousin wanted me to cover her tuition, just until next semester. Each time my chest tightened. Their voices dripped with expectation, not gratitude. It wasn't a request. It was a demand disguised as a favor. When I hesitated, the tone changed. "Don't be selfish. We've always been there for you. What good is your job if you can't help family?" The words sliced deeper than I expected. Nights became sleepless, my body tense even in rest. I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, stomach knotted, replaying their voices from that video. walking ATM. At work, I caught myself zoning out, the numbers on the screen blurring. My boss noticed. "Everything okay at home?" she asked gently. I smiled the way I always did. "Yeah, just tired." But the truth was, I was unraveling. My hands shook when I opened new bills. My appetite faded. Every ring of my phone sent a jolt of dread down my spine. The worst part wasn't the money, it was the isolation. My family had painted me into a corner. If I tried to say no, I was guilted. If I said yes, I was drained. And when I needed comfort, there was no one. Until one night, after another long day, I went to grab takeout. The cashier, a woman named Emily, had seen me more often than my own friends. She noticed the shadows under my eyes. "Rough week?" she asked, handing me my order. I laughed weakly. "More like a rough year." Her kindness cracked something open in me. Before I realized it, words spilled out. Not everything, just fragments. Family stress, bills, pressure. Emily listened quietly, no judgment, just presence. And then she said something simple. "You know, you don't have to keep letting them do this. You're not alone." Her words hit harder than I expected. Not alone. I walked back to my car with the bag of food in my hands, the night air cool against my face. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt a spark. A reminder that maybe, just maybe, there was another way. Narrator, VO. That was the first time someone reminded me I wasn't alone. And once that thought took root, everything began to change, fade to black, foreshadowing the storm ahead. The more I hesitated to send money, the bolder they became. At first, it was calls. Then it became threats, hidden in polite words. One night, my father's voice carried an edge I hadn't heard before. "Don't forget who raised you. You wouldn't have a life if it wasn't for us." Another day, my brother cornered me outside my own apartment, pounding on the door until neighbors peeked through blinds. "If you don't help me, I'll tell everyone at church how selfish you really are." I felt cornered, trapped in a cage I hadn't built, but had foolishly kept locked myself. And then came the family meeting. They invited me to my parents' house one Sunday evening. The whole family was there. My aunt, cousins, siblings, even distant relatives I hadn't seen in years. They sat in the living room like a tribunal, eyes sharp, expressions smug. At the center, my mother. She held a stack of bills in her lap like evidence in a trial. "We need you to cover these," she said firmly. "Everyone agrees. You're the only one who can." It wasn't a request. It was a verdict. I glanced around the room. Every face nodded in unison. No one asked if I was okay. No one cared what I had already given. They just saw me as their bottomless wallet. And for the first time, I didn't shrink. I looked at the stack of bills, then back at them. My voice was calm, almost too calm. "You know, it's funny. I saw a video recently. A video you didn't mean to send me." Silence dropped like a hammer. My aunt froze, her face draining of color. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. My brother shifted uncomfortably. "In it, you called me your walking ATM," I continued. "And I guess tonight proves you meant it." The room rippled with unease. My cousin tried to laugh it off. "Oh, come on, you know we were joking." "Were you?" I cut in, my tone sharp for the first time. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks a lot like the truth." For a flicker of a moment, I saw something I hadn't seen before. Fear. They hadn't expected me to push back. But instead of backing down, my father slammed his hand against the table. "Don't twist this. We're family. Family helps each other. If you don't want to, fine, but don't come crawling back when you need us." I smiled faintly. "Need you?" That's the thing. I never have. The air was heavy, my words slicing through it like a blade. They tried to regain control, tried to double down. "If you walk away, you'll regret it. Don't be dramatic. Just pay the bills. This is your responsibility." But in that moment, something inside me shifted. For years, I'd believed their threats. I thought their approval was survival. Now, I realized survival was stepping away. Narrator, VO. They thought they still had control. They didn't. And soon, they were going to learn exactly what it felt like to lose it. Fade out, ominous music rising, the war officially declared. If I thought the family meeting was the peak of their cruelty, I was wrong. it was only the beginning. The following weeks became a campaign, a war I hadn't chosen, but one they dragged me into. My brother spread whispers through the neighborhood. Suddenly, old friends called, concerned. "I heard you abandoned your parents. Is that true?" At work, a colleague mentioned overhearing my cousin at the grocery store ranting about how money changed me. It stung, not because I cared about their lies, but because people believed them. Then came the late-night phone calls. My mother sobbing, my father yelling, sometimes both at once. "If you don't help us, we'll lose the house. After everything we sacrificed, this is how you repay us?" But I had stopped answering. Instead, I started documenting. Every message, every voicemail, every manipulative word. I created folders on my laptop labeled Evidence. Each file was a piece of armor I would one day wear. Still, the emotional toll was real. Some nights I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every insult. The words, "walking ATM," echoed in my head like a cruel mantra. My body ached with tension. My heart felt like it was carrying stones. But I wasn't alone anymore. One evening, as I sat in a coffee shop reviewing yet another guilt-drenched email, the barista, someone I'd chatted with occasionally, placed a mug in front of me and said softly, "Whoever wrote that doesn't deserve you." It startled me. She hadn't read the email, but somehow, she saw through me. That small kindness cracked the shell I'd been carrying. We talked, and for the first time, I shared pieces of my story. Her words stuck. "Family isn't who drains you, it's who stands beside you." That was the first time I realized I was building a different kind of family. Meanwhile, my biological one grew more desperate. They began sending letters, not sweet ones, but official-looking envelopes meant to scare me. Threats about suing me, demands for money cloaked as debts owed. They even tried to weaponize the church. A cousin cornered me after service, wagging a finger. "You'll burn bridges you can't rebuild." Think carefully, I wanted to laugh. The bridges had already burned, but not by my hands. Through it all, I kept moving forward. I started therapy, pouring my anger and grief into words that no longer stayed trapped inside. I doubled down on work, securing a promotion that gave me even more independence. And slowly, I gathered allies, friends who believed me, co-workers who respected me, and yes, even strangers who showed me compassion. And then there was the symbolic object. The old piggy bank I'd had since childhood. Back then, every coin I dropped inside was meant for family emergencies. But now I began filling it again, not with coins, but with small folded notes to myself. Each one carried reminders. You are not their wallet. You are not their victim. You are free. Every note was a quiet rebellion, and as I built myself up, I could see the cracks forming in them. Their lies became more outrageous, their behavior more erratic. The more power I reclaimed, the more desperate they grew to keep me under control. Narrator, VO. The day of reckoning was coming, and no one could stop it. Camera lingers on the overflowing piggy bank, the notes inside glowing faintly, as if holding the hero's strength. Fade to black. The day came faster than I expected. It wasn't in a courtroom, but it might as well have been. My family had organized a massive holiday dinner at my aunt's house. Invitations went out to cousins, neighbors, even members of the church. Everyone but me, or so they thought. My aunt, the same one who had accidentally exposed them, called me the night before. Her voice was hesitant, but there was something in it that felt like guilt. "You should come. You deserve to be there." At first, I refused. Why walk into the lion's den? But then I realized this was my chance. The stage was set, the audience gathered, and for once, I wasn't coming to defend myself. I was coming with proof. The next evening, I arrived quietly, piggy bank tucked inside a simple bag, phone loaded with evidence. The room went silent as I stepped inside. My mother's smile faltered, my father's jaw tightened. My brother muttered something under his breath. "Look who decided to show up," my cousin sneered. I didn't answer. I walked straight to the dining table, set the piggy bank in the center, and looked around at every face watching me. "I wasn't invited," I began, voice steady. "But I think it's time everyone heard the truth." I opened my phone, casting the screen to the TV mounted on the wall. First came the video, the one my aunt had sent. The room froze as their laughter filled the air again, their voices calling me, the walking ATM. Gasps erupted from cousins who hadn't known. Neighbors shifted uncomfortably. My mother's face drained of color. Then I pulled out the folders, emails, text messages, voicemails, their manipulations, their threats, their greed laid bare in their own words. Each file hit like a hammer. The room, once buzzing with festive chatter, was now silent but for the sound of their empire crumbling. Finally, I lifted the piggy bank, opened it, and poured the notes onto the table. Dozens of folded slips spilled out. I read a few aloud. You are not their wallet. You are free. You are worth more than their lies. I looked straight at them. My voice didn't shake. I don't want apologies. I want change. For the first time, it wasn't me who looked small. It was them. My father's hands trembled. My mother reached for a glass, her fingers barely steady enough to hold it. My brother's face was red, anger mixed with shame. And yet, I felt no urge to gloat, no urge to scream, just calm, steady release. The silence stretched, heavy and undeniable. The guests avoided eye contact, whispers spreading like wildfire. The truth was out, and nothing could put it back in the shadows. Narrator, VO. In that moment, I wasn't their walking ATM. I wasn't their scapegoat. I was free. The camera lingers on the piggy bank notes scattered across the table, glowing under the chandelier light like fragments of truth too sharp to ignore. Fade to black. The fallout was immediate. After I left the dinner, I didn't wait to see who would clean up the wreckage. I had dropped the truth like a storm, and storms don't linger, they move on. Within days, the whispers spread across the community. Neighbors who once believed my parents' perfect image now kept their distance. My brother, once the golden child, found himself shut out of social circles he used to dominate. My parents stopped showing up to church potlucks, charity events, even simple neighborhood gatherings. Their empire of appearances had collapsed. But me? For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was gasping for air. I moved into a modest house on the edge of town, with a porch that caught the morning sun and a garden that smelled of lilacs in spring. Rachel, my unexpected ally, helped me paint the kitchen a soft shade of blue. We laughed when we splattered paint on our clothes, and for once, the laughter didn't sting. It felt real. The piggy bank sat on the mantel above the fireplace. Only now, it wasn't a symbol of mockery. It was filled with folded notes from people who believed in me. Rachel, Ms. Patel from the library, even anonymous slips from coworkers. Each note whispered the same truth. You are worth more than their lies. I still went back to the library, not because I needed the job, but because I loved the quiet order of books. I began funding small programs for kids who had none of the chances my family squandered. Scholarships, after-school tutoring, free book drives. And every time I handed a child their first book, I felt lighter, stronger, reclaimed. The nights no longer pressed down on me with silence. I slept without the tightness in my chest. Food tasted sharper, sweeter. Even the air felt different, like it was finally mine to breathe. But the lessons remained. I learned that family isn't always who shares your blood. Sometimes it's the people who stand beside you when the storm hits hardest. Rachel, Miss Patel, even my aunt, despite her mistake, had chosen me when it mattered. They became my family. And I learned that silence, my old shield, wasn't strength on its own. True strength was speaking when the moment demanded it. That night at the dinner table, I had finally spoken. Not with rage, not with tears, but with truth. I remembered my brother's smug grin, my mother's mocking toast, my father's cold laughter in that video. And then I remembered the silence that followed when the truth played out for everyone to see. The silence where their power broke apart. The contrast between those moments was everything. As the sun dipped low one evening, painting the sky in purple and gold, I held the piggy bank in my hands. The glaze was still chipped, the wing still cracked. But it had survived, just like me. I set it back on the mantel, a small smile tugging at my lips. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't triumph in their shallow sense of the word. This was peace. And as the cicadas hummed outside and the evening settled in, The words came steady and sure. This isn't the end. It's the beginning. Fade to black. Have you ever been treated like nothing more than what you could give? Like your worth was measured in money, favors, or sacrifices, while your heart was ignored? That's what I lived through. But I learned something powerful. Worth isn't something they hand you, like a gift you have to beg for. Worth is something you claim for yourself. If you've faced favoritism, betrayal, or abuse of power, I want to hear your story. Because when you share it, someone else who feels invisible might realize they're not alone. So tell me, what was the moment you finally stood tall? The moment you stopped being their puppet and started living for yourself? Drop it in the comments. Someone out there needs your story tonight. Because in the end, silence doesn't define us. Our truth does. Fade to black.